And her voice was almost a whisper to herself. It's all my fault. Your fingers immediately found hers, clasping them gently. I wasn't really there for him during his childhood. I was the worst mom he could ever have. Don't say that, Mother, you interrupted softly. He always talks to you. He shares his feelings with you. He appreciates everything you do for him. A faint smile touched her lips, though it carried more guilt than happiness. She slowly shook her head before looking back at you. She paused, swallowing past the emotion in her throat. That is simply me trying to make amends for the unforgivable mistakes I made in the past. She drew in a long, unsteady breath, as though preparing herself to dismantle the image of the perfect mother she had unknowingly allowed you to create. When my Jungkook was around 7, his father suffered devastating losses in his business. Our financial situation became so fragile that, for a few months, we couldn't even afford to send Jungkook to school. You grew quiet. The Jaeons were so wealthy now, so comfortably removed from the uncertainty of ordinary life, that imagining them struggling to afford something as basic as their child's education felt almost unreal.
For months, we stayed at home, trying to survive. Eventually, even putting food on the table became a struggle. Her fingers slowly slipped from yours, reaching instead toward the photograph. She gently traced the image of the little boy staring back at her. And then, we had to make a choice. Her fingertips lingered over Jungkook's tiny face. Whether we could continue living like that, or leave everything behind and start a new business together. It was risky, almost unimaginable, but his father and I worked ourselves to the bone for every won we could barely afford to spare back then. She paused, her gaze drifting slowly around the room. Only then did you truly notice it. Perfect portraits of Jungkook adorned nearly every wall, each photograph capturing a different stage of his life. Yet, despite all those memories, the room itself felt strangely untouched. The walls were painted a soft cream, though you knew he preferred darker shades. A delicate vase of flowers sat on the bedside table, despite knowing he liked keeping flowers out on the balcony. Even the smallest details, the clock, the bed sheets, the arrangement of the furniture, seemed carefully chosen by someone else. Nothing in the room truly felt like him, and suddenly you understood what Mrs. Jeon had meant when she said he had been lonely. I still remember when we secured our first small deal. The very first thing we did was send Jungkook away to a prestigious boarding school. And then, somewhere between turning Jeon Corp into the company it is today, managing employees, and constantly traveling for business, we lost sight of something far more important. She pressed her lips together, then continued. We forgot that we had a son to raise. Not just financially, Yen, but emotionally too. You watched in silence as she unraveled the pieces of your husband's childhood, each revelation making your heart ache a little more. A pained smile flickered across her tear-streaked face before she turned toward you, trusting you enough to share her guilt. He became so closed off, Yen. At 20, when boys are supposed to be reckless, carefree, enjoying their youth, my Jungkook was already so accustomed to obedience. He simply nodded at every decision we made for him, sending him abroad, asking him to take over parts of the company, and then her voice dropped. Even his marriage to Hyrin. Your heart thudded at the mention of her name. Somewhere inside you, there was still so much you didn't know about Hyrin, and every time someone offered you even the smallest glimpse into the woman who had once been Jungkook's wife, your curiosity only deepened. He didn't object even once when his father arranged his marriage to the daughter of one of his business associates. She pressed one hand over her mouth, trying to contain the emotion rising in her throat. And somehow, after the marriage, my son became even more withdrawn. He stopped talking to me.
He stopped talking to everyone. It felt like he was withdrawing even from himself. Her grief hardened into anger. That girl, she made my son suffer so much. You couldn't help the surprise that flickered across your face
at the sudden disgust in her voice. What kind of woman was she, YN? Her voice trembled with indignation. She humiliated him in front of our entire family. She mistreated Jungkook's appa. She mocked our family, as though everything we had built was beneath her. Your brows furrowed, unease settling heavily into the pit of your stomach. Your fingers curled into the edge of the sofa as you listened. What did we ever do to her? She continued. What did my son ever do? She shook her head then, tears gathering anew. We agreed to that marriage because her family begged us to. Their business was drowning, and their daughter had become another responsibility they could no longer carry. We took her in believing... Her breath shuddered. Believing that perhaps she would become someone who could stand beside my son when I couldn't. Her voice carried bitterness, and perhaps it was directed at herself. Their success, wealth, and influence had blinded her to the point that she had allowed herself to believe that just because the marriage solved a business problem, it could also solve something for her son, as though his heart and his life were merely another transaction. But they weren't. It was her son's life, and she had failed to remember that. But instead of supporting Jungkook, she made his life even more miserable. A sob finally tore through her throat. Your hands immediately moved to her back, rubbing gentle circles between her shoulders as she struggled to compose herself. I don't mean to speak ill of a dead person, YN. Perhaps I'm no better than her. I failed my son too. She hiccuped softly, wiping at the tears gathering along her cheeks. But like any mother, I only ever wished for my son to be happy. Truly happy. Peaceful. Her gaze softened as it settled on you. The way he seems to be now. Mrs. Gion wiped her face once more before gently caressing the top of your head. I knew it had to be you who brought that serenity into his life. Your hands trembled as you reached up to wipe away the tears still clinging to her cheeks. Even after everything you had learned, you couldn't bring yourself to resent this woman. She was still here, still taking responsibility, still trying to make amends for the mistakes she couldn't undo. Perhaps that was what made forgiveness possible. Jungkook's mother offered you a tender smile before pulling you into her embrace. Please, YN, don't ever leave his side. And just like that, Jungkook's heavy voice from that night returned back to you. Are you leaving me too? The memory struck with such painful clarity that you bit your lips, swallowing a rising sob in your throat. You finally understood. He hadn't been talking about Haerin leaving him. Heavens, she had never truly been there to begin with. He had been talking about his family, his mother, his father. About all those years when he must have longed for a warm embrace, only to find an empty room waiting for him. About the little victories that must have made him want to run home and tell someone, only to realize there was no one there to celebrate them with. About every achievement that should have filled him with pride, yet perhaps faded into nothing more than another task accomplished, another expectation fulfilled. He must have lived for years caught between two conflicting truths. The gratitude he felt toward his parents for giving him a comfortable life, and the quiet ache of wishing they had given him something money could never buy. Their presence, their time, their love. Mrs. Jian felt your tears falling into the fine silk of her dress. Her arms tightened around you, unaware that somewhere between her confession and your tears, you had begun to understand her son in a way you never had before. And perhaps as she held you, she remembered something else too. The first time she had noticed you, working quietly behind the counter of that little cafe. At first, there had been nothing particularly remarkable about you. And truthfully, her repeated visits had never been because of you. The cafe had simply become her guilty escape from the relentless demands of the city, A quiet hour in an inexpensive little place downtown where no one expected anything from her. Until she really noticed you. Her keen business instincts had spent years recognizing cleverness, ambition, and manipulation in people. She knew how easily kindness could be performed when there was something to gain from it. But what she saw in you that one afternoon was different. You had packed a modest meal for yourself, while carefully setting aside an expensive pack of macarons a customer had ordered for one of your coworkers. With the desperation poverty had carved into your life, you could have easily chosen the more expensive food for yourself, and no one would have questioned you. But you didn't. That was the first time you truly caught her attention. And after that, her eyes began searching for you whenever she entered the cafe. She saw you studying between shifts, textbooks open whenever you could steal a few quiet minutes. She noticed you staying behind to clean the cafe for a few extra won. Once she even watched you hand half of your own meal to a homeless child passing by, despite having so little for yourself. And then there was the book. She had watched you bow repeatedly to a customer who had once given you a worn, second-hand copy, your hands clutching it to your chest as though it were something precious. The more she watched you, the more she understood why she did so. You reminded her of her son. Your selflessness mirrored Jungkook's. Not because the two of you were alike in every way, but because you possessed the same instinct to give, even when there was very little left to give. Perhaps that was what made her believe you would be different from the people who had taken advantage of his giving nature before. You understood the distinction between someone being generous toward you and something actually belonging to you. You appreciated what was given, without ever mistaking generosity for an obligation. And even though you could never give back as much as you received, but still you tried. Then she had begun quietly asking about your family. What she learned left her heart aching. A broken home, a father who had surrendered himself to gambling, a mother who had drowned her own bitterness in alcohol, and a girl who had somehow learned to survive in the middle of it all, without allowing the world to turn her cruel. And perhaps that was when her heart knew, with a certainty that needed no explanation, that the two of you deserved the safety you could find in each other. A girl like a river, who had learned to carve her way through every obstacle life placed before her, bending where she had to, yet never ceasing to move forward. And a boy whose heart was as deep as an ocean, vast enough to hold the weight of his own wounds, yet gentle enough to offer shelter, despite all the unfairness.
All the misery life had left upon him. Perhaps that was what they had been meant to become for one another. A river could wander far from the ocean, carried through unfamiliar lands and shaped by countless turns, but somewhere within its current, it would always remember where it belonged. And an ocean, no matter how boundless, could never be complete without the rivers that journeyed toward it, carrying with them everything they had gathered along the way. Perhaps they were never meant to save each other. Perhaps they were simply meant to find each other, to complete what the other had been missing, to become one. That night, you went home alone. You sat with your thoughts about Hae-rin, about Aira, and about Jungkook. Why did it seem like Hae-rin had been the only villainess in his life? Why had she treated them that way? Even when Jungkook's family had helped her and her family. Was a little kindness in return for all that generosity really too much to ask for? Wasn't that just basic human decency? The questions kept circling endlessly in your mind as you moved around the kitchen, preparing a full-course meal for Jungkook. Somewhere between listening to his mother and hearing everything she had endured, a quiet ache had settled in your chest. You wanted to take care of him too. To give him even a fraction of the care he so effortlessly showered upon everyone else. You were setting the last dish on the table when you heard the front door open. Your head lifted as Jungkook walked into the house.
You had barely noticed his car pulling into the driveway. "You didn't call me, Yen?" he asked the moment he entered and found you standing near the dining table. Then his eyes fell on the table. "Why are you cooking? Why aren't you studying?" His brows lifted. You pressed your lips together, suddenly feeling a little self-conscious beneath his gaze. "It had been so long since I cooked, and you've never tasted anything I've made myself." "Hey." Jungkook reached for your chin, gently tilting your face toward him until your eyes met.
Why do you look so tired? Tired? His eyes lingered on your face, studying you with quiet concern. You were practically glowing with excitement when I dropped you off this morning. What happened? Oh. Your gaze drifted away. You tried to smile, but the expression barely reached your lips. It's just, I spent the day walking around the mansion and talking to Mother. Then we went through your old baby clothes and toys so Aira could have something to play with. Jungkook's eyebrow lifted, amusement finally softening his expression. My baby clothes? They're still there? Yes. A small smile finally found its way onto your face. Everything. You watched his expression turn thoughtful for a moment, before his eyes returned to yours. And what else did Mom tell you? You hesitated. Your fingers drifted toward his tie, idly fiddling with the knot before you slowly loosened it from his collar. Jungkook lowered his head slightly, making it easier for you to slip it free. About her. The words barely left your lips, but you felt him go still. You looked up at him. His eyes remained fixed on yours. What about her? Did she humiliate your family in front of everyone? Jungkook didn't answer immediately. He seemed to gather his thoughts before gently taking your hands into his. Things were complicated, Yen, and she did a lot of reprehensible things. Your brows drew together. Why was he so accepting of everything she had done? Don't you feel angry? You asked. Don't her past actions make you want to confront her? To make her answer for what she did? Jungkook didn't quite know how to respond. Watching you become so enraged over someone who had once mistreated his family stirred something complicated inside him. There were a lot of things about her, baby. He slipped an arm around your waist and gently drew you closer. A lot of things you don't know yet. And why don't I, Jungkook? Your brows lifted, desperation creeping into your voice. These little fragments of information are making me so frustrated. Do you understand? I don't feel good about any of this. I keep hearing her name in pieces. From you, from Mother. Things that don't make sense to me. And then I hear you talk about her while being drunk. Your voice faltered for a moment, before you continued. You mistook me for her, Jungkook. What am I supposed to think? By the time you finished, your chest was rising and falling heavily. But Jungkook's brows furrowed. I mistook you for her? You stared at him in disbelief. You said I looked like her. Heavens, I don't even see a single picture of hers anywhere in this house. I never said I looked like you, Yen. His confusion was unmistakable. What are you talking about? You said I looked like your wife. Realization slowly dawned across Jungkook's face. Oh. He immediately cradled your face between his hands, his thumbs brushing gently beneath your eyes. Oh, baby.
He brought his forehead against yours. Calm down, Yen. I'm so sorry. Your eyes fluttered shut as his voice softened, his lips hovering just above yours. I was talking about you. I was drunk. In that haze, I thought I was still at the hotel, and that there was some woman there who looked like you. He paused, his thumbs gently caressing your cheeks. I wasn't seeing Hayrin when I looked at you. And the moment you cried, and I took in my surroundings, I knew it was you. My wife. He wiped away the lone tear that had escaped your eye. Why didn't you tell me my past had been bothering you this much, His voice softened. You're my wife, Yen. You have every right to ask me whatever you want. I wanted to, you admitted quietly. but it felt like a forbidden topic. Talking about someone who once held such an important place in your life, and then taking Aira's mother's place in her life, when I haven't even taken on any of those responsibilities. You bit your lip. It didn't feel like I had the right to. Jungkook sighed softly. You are as much a mother to Aira as I am her father. Don't ever question that. His gaze softened. We both love Aira just as much as her biological parents would. You nodded, but then paused. Huh? Jungkook leaned forward and pressed a reassuring kiss to your forehead. Then he quietly took your hands in his. You didn't question him when he led you toward his bedroom. He made you sit on the edge of the bed, before handing you a glass of water.
Wait here for a moment. You closed your stinging eyes before gulping the water in a single go. You waited for him, resting your head against the headboard, trying and failing to steady your emotions. The soft click of the door made you sit upright. Jungkook walked toward you in measured steps, a small envelope in his hand. He held it out to you. She wrote this to me before she left the hospital and went to. His voice faltered, growing quieter until it was barely above a whisper. Jump off the bridge. Your fingers trembled as you took the envelope from him. Slowly, you opened the letter. Cheon, I gave birth to a beautiful daughter this afternoon, and you are the first person I am telling this about. Funny, right? The person I turned to every time I had to blame someone for my miserable life. That person is the only one who came to my mind when I am about to take the last leap of my life. Literally, Jian. I am not going to make it any longer. He is not coming back anymore. He refused to acknowledge Aira. Said how could he believe that she was his daughter? He called me names once again. Told me that I was a slut sleeping with you. That I was the one who didn't wait for him and moved on. That I married you. That Aira must be your daughter. There's so much darkness around me, Jian. Why does it feel like someone is punching the life out of me? Why does it hurt so much just to breathe? Aren't I already dead? What more can I do to hold on anymore? What wrong did I do? I just loved a man. Why did everyone, including that very man, abandon me? He hurt me. I know that. But I still went back to him again and again. Even after everything. Even when he refused to take me in. Even before the night of our wedding. I know what everyone will say. That I should hate him. That I should forget him. That I should be grateful he showed me who he really was. But why doesn't knowing all of that make me stop loving him? Why do I still wait for someone who has already made it clear that he doesn't want me? Why can't I move on from someone who didn't even keep his promise to break off my wedding and marry me? I hate myself for that more than I hate him. This helplessness is eating me from the inside like a disease. The dark roots of destruction are everywhere. In my head, my heart, and now even my body. They told me that my body was very weak, and that Aira too might suffer from complications later because of the sedatives I took. And in all of this, I dragged you down with me. I vented the venom in my heart on you and your family. You never deserved it.
The disgust that belonged to my own family for selling me off to someone else the moment they discovered I was pregnant. The hatred I have for myself for not speaking up when I should have. I didn't miss a chance to pour all of it onto you. I blamed my family for what they did to me. Then I blamed you for becoming a part of the life I never wanted. And when there was no one left to blame, I turned it all on myself. I know that wasn't fair. I knew you were innocent, Jaeon, and I still made you pay for things you had never done. But I have no one. Not a family that cares about me. Not even Jacob, who was supposed to love me. And here I am,
begging you to take care of my child. Please, Jaeon. There is no one else for her. Her father doesn't want her. My parents will always look at her as the reason their lives were ruined. And I don't know if I can ever give her the love she deserves. But you can. I know you can. Please take care of Aira. Give her the love I don't know how to give her anymore. I am sorry. I am so sorry, Jaeon. But I can't apologize to you in person anymore. What more can I do, Jaeon? What more can I do? I keep asking myself that, but I don't have an answer anymore. There's just darkness all around me. Just darkness. And I am so tired. Too weak to fight it. Too helpless. I can't see anything anymore.
Why is the world so dark, Jian? I keep telling myself that tomorrow will be different. I've been telling myself that for years. But I'm tired of waking up and realizing that it isn't. I'm tired of being afraid. I'm tired of disappointing everyone. I'm tired of disappointing myself. I don't want to disappoint Aira. My child deserves someone better than me. Please don't let her think I didn't love her. I did. Kim Hae-rin. The ink that had already bled across the paper blurred further as your tears fell onto it. You drew in a shaky breath through your mouth, your mind struggling to catch up with what you had just read. How had you never noticed? And yet, now that you knew, the pieces seemed to fall into place with cool clarity. Aira had never really resembled Jungkook. You had simply assumed she had taken after her mother. And the timeline? God, the timeline. Aira was already a year old, while it had been barely 18 months since Jungkook's marriage to Hae-rin. How had you never thought about it before? You blinked away the tears and lifted your head, your gaze finding the man sitting before you. She wasn't stable, Yen. Jungkook's voice was low. She took a lot of sedatives, antidepressants, just to keep herself going. You could barely form the words. Aira? She isn't... He gave a faint shake of his head. No. His voice remained gentle. I'm not her biological father. But legally, she is my daughter. A sob caught in your throat. The revelation seemed to settle between you, heavy and impossible. Jungkook's lips curved into a small, almost sorrowful smile as he reached for your hands and held them between his. After Hae-rin's death, her lawyer contacted me and told me about her will. She had left everything she owned to Aira. Everything. He paused, his thumb brushing gently over your trembling fingers. And she named me as Aira's legal guardian. Another sob broke through your throat. Jungkook. He moved closer, wiping the tears from your cheeks. Yen, how could I abandon the child? His voice was quiet, almost as though he were explaining something he had never once questioned himself. Maybe Hae-rin never respected my family. Maybe she made choices that hurt all of us. But she was unstable. She made wrong choices, and she suffered for them too. You clutched the hand resting against your cheek, but he continued. Had I handed Aira over to her family, they wouldn't have hesitated to take everything that had been left in her name. They even tried to fight me in court. His expression hardened. They accused me of killing Hae-rin. Your jaw clenched. How could anyone be so cruel? Maybe her family had been part of the reason Hae-rin had spent her entire life desperately searching for love elsewhere, until somewhere along the way, her mind had become a place she could no longer bear living inside. Why didn't you tell the truth? You whispered. You were innocent. I did, Yen. I did. His gaze dropped. But some rumors spread like wildfire. And even when the fire is extinguished, the destruction remains. He gave a faint, bitter smile. Even after I came forward with the truth, people still whispered. I can't stop the whispers, Yen. I can't stop the criticism, the speculation. A painful ache seized your chest, and another sob escaped you. It was so unfair, so unbearably unfair. How could anyone look at a man like Jungkook and still choose to believe the worst of him? Couldn't they simply look at him and see how deeply he loved the people he considered his own? Didn't you know she was going to take such a step? Your voice trembled as you asked. His eyes lowered. I wish I had. A heavy sigh left him.
But she never let me in. She didn't even tell me about her due date. I wasn't at the hospital when Array was born. He was quiet for a moment before continuing. She told me about her pregnancy on the night of our wedding. She told me never to expect anything from her, that she would divorce me the moment her boyfriend came back. Your brows furrowed as you listened, so I kept my distance. I barely knew when she came into the house or when she left. I kept myself in another room, while she mostly stayed in the outhouse or at hotels. I didn't know the people she spent time with. I didn't know where she went. I knew almost nothing about her. His voice grew quieter. But one day, it was my parents' anniversary. I contacted her and told her that our presence was required. The media wouldn't stop talking, and I didn't want anything to overshadow my parents' day, especially not for my mother. A faint smile touched his lips, though there was little warmth in it. Mom had always been hopeful about my marriage. I didn't want to break her heart. He sighed once again, before slowly lowering himself until his head came to rest on your lap. You didn't hesitate. Wiping away your tears, you gently threaded your fingers through his hair. Hyren came. She attended the party. Everything was fine, until one of the guests asked her about her growing belly. They assumed I was the father. His jaw tightened, and that was all it took for her to lose it. He stared somewhere past you, as though he could still see that room. My father quickly intervened when she lashed out at the guest, and she turned toward him and said, "How can they just assume that?" His expression hardened. Then he repeated word by word, as if it had been etched in his memory. Like no matter how hard he tried, the words simply wouldn't leave his head. She said, "How do you know Jungkook is your son, Mr. Jaeon? Did you see it happen? Did Mrs. Jaeon come and prove it to you herself? Only the mother knows who the father is. So why are you all so comfortable deciding who the father of my child is?" You felt his body tense beneath your hand. Your own heart raced at the words. She said it in front of all his guests. He swallowed. I tried to stop her, told her to mind her words. A humorless smile touched his lips. And that's when she turned on me. "Oh, don't you dare lecture me, you loser. What did you think? You buy a wife for yourself and I'll throw myself at your feet. Worship the ground you walk on because your family did my family a favor."
He paused. You got your business deal, my family got whatever they wanted from yours, and somehow I'm the one who is supposed to be grateful that I was the price. His fingers curled slightly as he hugged your stomach. Then she turned to my mother. He let out a heavy breath. You should have done a better job raising your son. He doesn't even understand when a woman simply doesn't want him. He keeps coming after her like a dog that doesn't understand the meaning of no. Silence enveloped the room. You had nothing to say. Nothing that could possibly ease the weight of what he had carried for so long. I never forced her into anything, Yin. I never asked her to do something she didn't want to do. His voice was quiet, but there was an old hurt buried beneath it. It was one event, one evening, and she humiliated my father in front of people he'd known for decades and didn't even spare my mother. A bitter breath escaped him as he tried to control the shimmering anger within. And somehow, you found yourself thinking about the strange way both mother and son seemed more distressed over the other being mistreated than over their own wounds. Mrs. Jian had cried for her son, and Jungkook, even now, seemed determined to minimize his own humiliation, his own hurt. And even after she was gone, his voice faltered. After 8 months of our marriage, right before we were supposed to get divorced, she never really left my mind, Yin. Your hands moved slowly over his back, and his arms tightened around you. Her face would come to me in my sleep. She'd call me a coward, a man hiding behind his parents' fame. He swallowed.
and then she'd ask me to take care of Ira.
He gave a faint, humorless laugh. My mind was so messed up. You couldn't bear to hear any more. You leaned into him, pressing a warm kiss against the side of his head, then another to his forehead, and another against his closed eyelids. You kissed his cheeks, his temple, every place you could reach, as though that would somehow soothe every wound he had carried in silence. You understood now how difficult it must have been for him to open up about these things, but he had trusted you enough to let you see them. Even in the beginning of your marriage, when everything between you had still felt uncertain, he had never lied to you. Never once had he made you feel as though you were being punished for the failure of his previous marriage. And now, those strange, constant tugs between his past and your own marriage finally made sense. Both marriages had been arranged for him, but they had been nothing alike. "You are none of those things, baby," you whispered against his hair. The tension slowly left his body beneath your touch. He said nothing. He simply stayed there, absorbing the warmth you offered him, until he eventually pushed himself higher, settling his head against your chest. You leaned back, allowing him to draw closer, allowing him to find comfort in the steady rhythm of your heartbeat. Then something occurred to you. "Is that why you get up in the middle of the night and check on me?" You felt his fingers twitch against your waist. He shook his head faintly. "Not only because of that." He was quiet for a moment. "I saw how you didn't seem to push me away. You let me in." His voice softened. "And I was afraid that you might be struggling and I wouldn't know." Your heart clenched. Even while he was carrying so much of his own pain, he had been worrying about yours. And that made you realize there was small guilt within him, buried deep, for Hyun-rin. Maybe not because she was someone he felt anything for, but maybe simply as a human, as someone knowing a person, sharing a relationship, and failing to help them. You didn't want him to indulge in those thoughts. You didn't want him to carry something that heavy. You kissed his forehead again and mumbled, "You don't have to do that anymore." He lifted his face from your chest, looking at you with quiet confusion. "Why?" You smiled and gently brushed your thumb across his cheek. "Because I'll sleep next to you from tonight." His eyes widened slightly. "Really?" he asked, almost cautiously. Are you comfortable with that?" You nodded. Then you lowered yourself until your arms wrapped completely around him. "Let's rest for a little while. Then we'll have dinner."